Money, 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 money. So if you had your PPP loan, EIDL loan, or any of the other acronyms, the ERTCs, or maybe some grants for your salon, and you're trying to figure out, what can I get forgiven? Should I apply for more? Are there more places for me to get some government money that would be helpful? This is the show for you. Stick around. Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Evo Revo Show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. Hey guys, what's going on? I am Jason Everett, and with me is Mr. Doug Campbell. What's up, Doug?
How's it going?
Dude, super good to have you on today. Be talking about this subject of all the money. In the last year and a half, year and 10 months, whatever it's been, we're creeping in on 2 years. As crazy as that sounds. Right? We're creeping up on 2 years now. There's been a lot of talk around these PPP loans, EIDL loans, grants, ERTCs. And I think if you're watching this and you received some level of income in some way, do me a favor and say money in the chat. I want to know, for those of you guys that are on watching this live with us right now, for those of you guys that are just checking this out on the podcast later, if you've got some of that money, congratulations. Like, that's huge. The government really stepped up and supported people, and especially for the salons that were closed. And by the way, I know there's some other Canadian programs, so my Canadian brothers and sisters, I'm sorry, I don't know all the acronyms for you. However, this show will still apply as much as possible to you, because we're going to talk today about the concepts and what you're using, regardless of the terms that were given to you. So just know, we're not going to get into all the specifics of each one of these, but we're going to talk about how to make sure you've gotten what you can get, that you can go back and make sure some of this gets forgiven. And I know like I said, in Canada, different levels were forgiven versus in the US, maybe all of them were forgiven. So just stick around. Today is going to be a really good call, because there might even be more money on the table for you. So Doug, you had talked about this, right? Is that, we were talking about PPP loan forgiveness, right? And you talked about your bank. What did your bank do for forgiveness? 'Cause I know a lot of salons we work with have already got their loan forgiven. Some have not, right? So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to stay up. Make sure you're staying up with your bank to find out what their process is. I do know that the SBA has made a portal, especially for smaller loans. I'm not sure what the threshold is. When I say smaller, I think it's under 75,000. That you can go through and do it. It's real quick. It's like bam, 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 and it's on their site. So it doesn't go through the bank and then to the SBA, and it goes to the SBA, and then they let the bank know. So you get notification from both of them once it's done. Super quick. Bigger ones may be a little bit more complicated, but I do think because this is the second time around, it's not brand new, that there is a easier process than what it was first time. I think the first time nobody knew what the hell they were doing on the bank
there was
side. Right.
I remember we were talking about it when it first came out, and we had on some people who'd really done some study, and they said, here's exactly how to do it, because Congress just basically like released a website, and they're like, good luck. They're like, I hope you figure it out, because they had no idea, they just had money.
Yeah, the banks didn't know, because it'd never been set up that way before. And, they were nervous about, they've got these loans on our books, and are they going to go away? And,
right. Yeah. So anyway, nobody knew any answers.
And by the way, as soon as you can get it forgiven, try to get it forgiven, because it will affect you if you're trying to go to the bank and purchase more property or do anything like that, because though they know it's probably going to be forgiven, they have to look at it as a loan.
Yep.
So when they do the analysis on you, there's still this outstanding loan there that has to be paid. So when you do an income to debt ratio on your business, it's gonna hurt that number. So soon, I'd say with PPP, just make sure that you're staying in touch with your bank. If you haven't heard from your bank, reach out to them and say, hey, can I, because I know that they've released for a lot of the second round of PPP, you can get them forgiven. Don't sit around and wait on that.
Yeah, be proactive. Be proactive.
Right.
And I think that's why I wanted to bring it up today, Doug, because I think there's some people who are like, well, I don't know if it's gonna be forgiven. Am I supposed to do anything? And Yes, yes, you are supposed to do something like, your bank, maybe your bank's cool like Doug's and just sent you a link and said, "Hey, fill this out and you should be good to go." Maybe you're like me and you didn't check your email, right? That could happen too, and maybe you just missed it. And so you need to call your bank, find out what's going on, because those PPP loans, you might need to do a couple of additional steps to actually show them your profit and loss statement, like show them some things in order for it to be forgiven. So just be aware. Also, it's possible that if you didn't apply for an EIDL loan, now, EIDL loan was set up as an economic injury disaster loan that you could get, up to $500,000. And I think it was like a 3 point something percentage rate, or high twos, three, something like that you could go get and apply for. And if you didn't apply, like, you might have applied and got your PPP loan, which in some cases might be forgiven. But if you didn't apply for EIDL loan, if you don't know this, they are still available. You can still apply for EIDL loans. And you might go, well, Jason, I don't know if I really need that. We kind of weathered that storm. Well, I would just say, like, you can use that EIDL loan just to support your business and your growth too. Right. So having access to that, all you have to do, if you search SBA COVID-19 relief, I think I'm looking at the website right now. It's COVID-19 relief 1.sba.gov. And I've been in touch with them. And you can actually get on the phone, have a conversation with a real human being, and submit all your paperwork online. They take that in. So if you haven't done that, you might still be eligible for that. And then the other thing I've seen, Doug, and we've seen so many salons inside our academy who've done this too, is a lot of salons in our academy were very proactive and looked for local grants. Right. They
Right.
were very proactive and started being active in the community, with their chamber of commerce and their local. They just searched. And if you haven't done this yet, man, oh man, like, look it up. Just search the name of your city and COVID grant. So like we live in Roseville. So you might want to look up Roseville, California COVID grants. And I say that because there were so many people that didn't even know those type of local grants existed, that as they were doing they did their PPP and they did their EIDL, but they didn't look for any other grants that were available. So just be aware. You could go and search your city name COVID grants, and there's some interesting information on that. Doug, you mentioned a little bit, and by the way, if that's helpful, do me a favor and comment helpful in the chat, because I think we had people who had completely just given to them grants, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to help their business.
Yeah, and something on that too, I just want to hit, since you got this money coming into your business, how you use that money is going to make all the difference in where your business is going to end up in the future. I'd say the worst, well, two worst things, and I would say, is that
Two,
you're scared to touch
only two of the worst.
only two. That it's sitting in a bank account somewhere, and you're terrified to touch it because you don't know what the
Worried.
regulations are and all that stuff. So why not say,
Yeah.
find out, get yourself comfortable with it, what you can and can't use. It's something that that's just a process of accounting. Because the money doesn't have a little stamp on it, and this dollar has to be used, and they're going to trace that dollar. It's just, you got to say, I use this amount of money for this amount of money for this. So then the other thing that I would say, the other bad thing, in my opinion, was you just said, hey, it's a payday, and you just suck that money out and you go buy you a car or whatever.
Dude, I saw so many people do that, Doug. I mean, I don't, not to knock any. If you were one of those people, like, please, I don't know if I want you to feel any shame for this. I guess that's not really the deal, but I want you to be aware. I want you to be aware. This is
Right.
the awareness channel.
I
Like, be
get it,
aware, right?
especially, if your business has been struggling and you've got money and it's sitting there, and you're like, I've been working for free all these years. I'm finally going to
That's
get something.
That's kind of what I
Um,
keep hearing, right? Is people were
right,
like, "Hey, we've never paid ourselves, and since we got this money, I have an
right.
opportunity to." Both of us took a little bit of a payday off this money that we received, and I think just be aware of where you're using it, because that doesn't necessarily help you grow. And you're like, "But I've been growing it by myself without taking any money for that." Just be aware, because it's not necessarily the best use of it. It's not what it's designed for.
Right. So I think if you could turn it around and use it for something productive inside of your business, it's going to help your business do better and produce a profit. Because this way, if you took the money out and just gave it to yourself, I'm finally rewarding myself for the 10 years I've put into this salon. Okay. That's one way you could have done it. The other
Right.
way you could have done it is, I'm going to use this money to revamp things from a business standpoint so that my salon starts kicking out a good profit. So in
Yeah.
the future, the salon continues. I create the golden goose. So the salon will start producing the golden egg.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Mm-hmm.
so if I just took it, then I didn't turn my salon into the golden goose. It goes back to the same thing that wasn't paying me before.
Yeah.
So I think you got to be careful
Yeah.
about what you do with it. And what I'd say is if you don't have, not to toot our own horn, but if you don't have someone that you're working with, a consulting
Guiding
company, something
you.
like that, whether
Yeah.
it's us or whether it's somebody else, you need to get with somebody that you're comfortable with, that you feel like can help you, that you can relate to, that can help you move your business forward, so that it does become the golden goose. Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah,
it's
it's a good
like,
way to say that.
right, because I mean, we've taken people that have started off with either no profit or very low profit, under 5%, and they get up to 18, 19, 20, 25% profit. And you create a system where it does that consistently, you're gonna feel a lot better. So that's what I'm saying. That's the opportunity that you've got with some of this extra money. Say, hey, I'm gonna use it because I've never really been able to afford a consulting company or a coaching company before. So now I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take that money, I'm gonna invest in that, let somebody look at my business from the outside and bring it in. I mean, most businesses, I guess, is something that's lost in the salon industry too. Most businesses use some form of consulting, have some level of consultant or coaching going on, because you're just going to move faster.
Well, I would say
Um,
anyone that's doing really well. Does
yeah,
that make
yeah,
sense? Like, I mean, there's plenty of people, we see this all the time. People get to a certain level and then they kind of top off, Doug, right? Is they're like,
mhm,
oh, I just can't grow anymore. It could be 500,000, could be a million, could be 1.2. And they're like, I've been sitting there for 3 years and I haven't grown. And I think to your point with the PPP loans, EIDL loans, any grants or these ERTCs, is like you can either eat once or you can eat for a lifetime.
right.
Right. And I think some people are like, oh my God, I haven't eaten. Like, oh, shoot, I paid myself some money finally. And they're like, oh, it's so good. But like, this is where having an outside source is really helpful, because like, I could show you how to eat for a lifetime. Like, I really can, because we can turn some things around, change some things. And I know there's people in our academy who use money that they receive specifically to get some help. I know some of our Canadian homies. So shout out to Canada. If you're on from Canada, please message in the chat and say Canadian homies, Canadians. But anyway, the Canadian homies, I know that one of our clients just got approved for a new grant, a province grant that they applied for, that actually allows them to pay for part of their program, some of their little voice masteries for their team, some team training. And there's some amazing team training grants. And they were like, hey, I want to use these grants to further my education, not just for me as the owner, but for my staff, to employ more people, add more employees, and create amazing lifestyle. Canada's got some killer grants if you know how to use them. And if you want more help on Canadian grants or loans, do me a favor and say Canada grants in the chat, and we can hopefully message you and at least tell you about them, what they are to look into. But Doug, I want to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk about ERTCs, because you had mentioned there's your accountant had said, oh no, you probably can't get that, but you have gone down a different path. And so if you've been told no, you probably don't qualify for some of these things, you're going to want to stick around after the break, because there's some important details we're going to give you that'll help you out. So do me a favor, stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, HPSA listeners, let me ask you this. Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you on every appointment and watching it chew up your profit? Well, with Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you. Using a mobile app paired with a Bluetooth scale, Salon Scale will tell you exactly what your color is costing you on every bowl mix down to the gram. As you mix, Salon Scale will also digitally store your formulas and track how much product is being used in real time, so you can manage your inventory, cover your expenses, and generate more profit in your salon. Use promo code HPSA10 to get 10% off an annual subscription. Salon Scale, the new standard for mixing color.
Welcome back to the show. Doug and I are chatting about PPP loans, EIDL loans, grants, ERTCs. And yes, I wrote down a cheat sheet, so I make sure I said all my acronyms with the right amount of letters, because whoo, this is a lot, Doug. I mean, it's like, the government is really good. I did government contract work for almost, how many years was it? I think it's about 6 years. I did government contract work, and like the amount of acronyms that the government is good at creating is ridiculous. Like we used to do BLFST, Brigade Level Future Soldier Training something. And it was like, they would create the longest term and just go, create this acronym. And I think the government did not disappoint when they said, let's give the people money. Let's create more acronyms. That will make things less confusing, right?
Yeah, and I really suck at acronyms. I mean, PPP is pretty easy. My mild dyslexia doesn't bother
Yeah.
that one, but it's like my big one, FOMO. I'll get backwards and say
Mofo.
mofo, which is
You
much
mofo.
different, much different meaning than FOMO. So yeah, acronyms are not my strong suit for sure.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. Can't believe I didn't come to that last destination training, you mofo. Yeah,
right,
different story. Um,
completely different.
yeah. All right. Well, by the way, if you screw up acronyms like we do me a favor and say screw up in the chat because it's one of those things, man. They'll mess you up. So as you look at these acronyms and we talk about them, especially ERTC, which do you remember what ERTC stands for, Doug? If you can,
Yeah.
speaking of your
Employee
dyslexia kicking in.
retention tax credit. That's the only reason I can remember that in its correct form. It's
Yeah.
because I know what the words.
And then also too, we had PPE requirements and PPP loans, right? So, there's all these things that'll be that it's just again acronym hell is what I would say. Acronym hell. Is it Doug? You had said that the ERTC that your accountant. Tell me what your accountant said, and because I think this is really important because some
Right.
people might have heard this exact same thing from their accountant.
Right. So yeah, the first iteration of the ERTC was that if you got the PPP, you could not qualify for the employee retention tax credit. So if you took PPP, you just couldn't do it. Then in the next iteration, they changed it and said that you could. And there's a wide variety of qualifications. There's not just one thing that qualifies you or disqualifies you. And so I reached out to my accountant, and nothing against
Let's
her.
look into this.
Right, she's a great accountant for what she does, but she's one of the compliance accountant that makes sure that
Yeah.
everything's legal and done
We'll
right.
talk about that in a
Um,
second because that's an important little add-in. We'll talk about that.
yeah, so she looked at it, and with all this stuff coming out, that's a lot of information on top of all the other things that are changing. She was more worried about the normal regulation stuff. Quickly looked at it and said, no, I just don't think you're going to qualify for this, Doug. I don't see how you're going to qualify. And I said, okay, well, I've heard there's a lot of different things. So I looked around and searched out some firms that specialized in this, where people really knew it inside and out. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, would I be able to qualify? And they said, yeah, we think we can get you qualified for it.
Nice.
You need to send
Nice.
us X, Y, and Z paperwork.
Mhm.
They're going to take 10% of whatever that's their fee, which is great because if I don't get anything, they don't charge me anything.
Right.
And it's on them as long as I give them the correct paperwork. What they do with it after that is on them. They know the rules. They know the law on it. They know what it is. It's not me making anything up. So if
Right.
your accountant has kind of said, no, I don't see how it's going to work for you, it's because they may just want
They
to
may
get, they
not
don't want to
know.
get here. Right. They may not know and didn't look all the way into it
Right.
because there's several different ways. I mean, it's from loss of revenue to if supply chain issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of other factors,
Right.
right?
Any local regulations that was restricting you in
Mhm.
any way, shape, or form. So there's a lot of different things that can qualify you, and it's not all of these things. It's any one of these things
Yeah.
can trigger your eligibility for it. So you just need to work with somebody that really understands. And nothing against your accountant. If your accountant said it, reach out, look, do some searching because you can do it. It will work all the way through this year. You can
Yeah.
possibly qualify. You can still go back to last year
So
and
good.
correct anything. And then you can't use the only caveat is if you got PPP, whatever you use for PPP for payroll, then that money would not be able, that payroll would not be used in the calculation. But
Mm.
all the payroll around that, before it, after it, all that stuff can be used in it. So yeah, just don't give up on that one, Chet, because you could end up getting the amount of money that your EIDL loan may have been. So you could
Mhm.
possibly wipe that loan off
That
and
would be
get it off
amazing.
your books. Yeah, and that's the other thing that happened too. I don't know if everybody's aware of that. The EIDL loan, the payments got pushed back another year too. So it's in
Mm.
2022 is when the payments start, and you got to make your judgment call there because you are gaining interest on the loan if you're not paying on it. So you are gaining some interest. But if you
Mhm.
need the cash flow now, then you got another year worth of cash flow. But if you can pay it, I would go ahead and start. There's not that you can't make payments. You just don't have to make a payment until next year.
So one thing I think is really helpful here too, Doug, and I don't know if you guys have gotten calls from people saying, "Hey, we can get you. The government has issued money, and we can help you go get it." Be really fearful of companies
Mhm.
that are calling you saying, "We are the government," or "We can get you these loans." Because Doug, you kind of mentioned like these guys are going to take a fee to do it. I had heard of people saying, "Hey, we'll submit your PPP loan for a fee," which I believe I'm not an attorney, so check with your attorney. But that was an illegal thing. If
Mhm.
you couldn't submit for somebody's PPP loan to take some of their PPP loan, right? That was
Right.
illegal. So I just want to clarify on something that you said in here because there are companies literally scamming people by calling and saying, we'll help you do this. But ERTC, a little bit different. And again, Doug, you had kind of said this when we did the show and we show prep, is that talking about ERTC was like, look, I was told no, I didn't have this ERTC money, and so you researched on your own this company. It
Right.
wasn't they sent you a robocall and you were like, oh yes, person, I can't understand how you're speaking, I would like to use your services. Like, you sought out a company
Right.
specializes in ERTC, and they said, look, we'll work for free and help you get this money in exchange for this, which is not illegal in that scenario. So
Right.
be aware that I don't want you to be susceptible to a scam, because you might get a phone call and be like, hey, this is that thing Jason and Doug were talking about. I better
Right.
say yes. Okay, watch out for the call. When they're calling you, it means there's a big incentive for them. They might even charge you
Or
more.
even the emails. I'd say do your own
Oh yeah,
research.
sweet
Do your
Lord.
research, and then once you find a couple of companies, call them up, talk to them, make sure you're comfortable with what they're doing,
Yeah.
and then you can proceed from there.
Yeah, so just make sure as you're doing these things. I mean, there are grant writing companies that exist out there, and they'll help you get grants. And that, like, but the idea is, how do I say this nicely? I think the government really wants to make it easy for you to do it, but I'll remind you, they are the government. Their job, they're not app designers for Apple. They're not trying to make it beautiful and flowy and your kindergartner can figure it out. There's a kind of a bureaucratic setup for how they have to do it and what they have to do and what regulations they have to deal with. It's like the giant, most corporate policy ever, but government, it even slows it down. So just be aware that you might have to call in. Like, I was calling in on something from a government thing for SBA the other day, and I had to call 8 different times, talk to 8 different people to finally get the answer I wanted. Common. Remember, it's like calling the DMV to get an answer. It might take you a little bit of extra, but it is doable by us mere mortals, right? You can do it. It doesn't necessarily mean you need somebody to handhold you. I guess I just don't want you as a salon owner to get dissuaded and be like, you know what? It's just, I'm not a numbers person. It's probably a bunch of documentation I don't even have anyway. I would really encourage you to make sure, if you didn't file it because you didn't have the paperwork or whatever, that you go back and look for those opportunities, because you may still be eligible for things that you didn't know because you were afraid of it. I really hope there's salon owners that are out there that if that handout was available for you to grab it, that you use it as an advantage for you to grow your business. And like Doug and I said at the beginning of this episode, use it to eat for the rest of your life, not for one day, right? Like, really go back and say, how do I use this money wisely to invest in resources that will continue to pay off, not a one-time payday?
Yep. Yep. If you use that, I mean, it just makes a huge difference if you use it to get some help to get your business running the way your business deserves to run. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be a very rewarding business, a very rewarding industry.
Yeah.
There's just some things that you're gonna that you do, again, you probably were never told, never taught how to do it, and that's like one things that we love about our group is it's a group think. There's a whole bunch of people that are doing and trying and experimenting and learning from each other. And if you got the money to be able to join something like that,
Yeah.
do it. I mean, that's gonna
Yeah.
that's gonna make a big difference rather than, wow, that was nice that year when I had that bump and actually was able to take money out of the salon.
That was the
Um,
only year in 15 years of our company's history that I was able to take a payday when the government kicked us that loan. Let's make that payday every year, because you're growing it. And if you're not
yep.
paying yourself right from your salon, you're not profitable. Do something free, man. We have a profitable salon owner Facebook group. If you want to be in that group, do me a favor and say profitable in the chat, and we'll send you the Facebook group information, because we want to help you and serve you and support you. That's why we do these podcasts every single week, to make sure that you guys have the best information possible and you feel like you've got a leg up in the industry. I just really hope that you guys got some good value out of today. If you did, do me a favor and comment value. If you're on with us live, if you're listening while you're driving in the car, like, do me a favor, shoot me a message and say, hey, I love today's episode. I love getting messages like that, by the way. I love it. It's encouraging for us. I share it with Doug. You can just say, look, I love today's episode. It was really helpful. Thank you. I love it when you guys send supportive messages like that, because it just means that we're not, operating in a vacuum. We're really doing some good for the community. And I just, I had, there was a gal, her name is Lori. She messaged me and said, Jason, I can't tell you how much I appreciated everything you guys did. Even just your free podcast, has helped me so much this last year to grow. And I screenshot it and I keep them around, because I'm just, our mission is to elevate the world's perception of the salon spa industry and to just serve you guys like nobody's business. Whether you're in our program or not, we're here to serve. And for those in our program, we kick butt, take names, and do some really cool stuff. And for those of you guys that are just hanging around and snooping and being here, I hope that we continue to serve you guys as well. So thanks for hanging out with the podcast. Hope it was ridiculously valuable, and looking forward to serving you guys even more in the future. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to get all of our updates, and you check us out. And also sneak us a rating. If today was helpful for you, sneak us a rating and say, I like these guys, because it really does help us show up in the podcast charts if we do have more ratings as we grow. So thank you for being here. Doug, as always, thanks for having the chat about Acronym City today, and for being here. So thanks, man. Have a good day.
All right.
See you guys. Bye for now.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Evo Revo podcast. Today's podcast was brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. Please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.